Welcome all to the Man Sports Fan podcast. My name is Phil Schultz. I'm your host today. I'm here with Brian from Dog Millionaire Fremming and Chris Slim Smitty Smith. How you boys doing tonight?
I'm awake and happy to be here.
No nap. That's good.
No nap.
We don't need the
I appreciate.
nap.
No, he doesn't. I'm happy he's awake too. Phil, I also appreciate that you call out yourself as the host each time. Like, it's never going to change, but people need to know you are the host.
Yeah, no, I want them to look at me and think of me and think host of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of my identity right now. Kind of working through that. But hey, well, just so you know, Chris right now is in a DraftKings, I don't know what you're doing, daily, whatever. He needs Austin Reeves to hit one more three. So we all put our thoughts and prayers to that.
Absolutely.
Come on, Austin. Let's go.
You got this, Austin. We're so happy to be here. This is take two. Chris's technology malfunctioned. Had too many tabs open. But we're back.
We're here.
Chris, you have anything to add to what happened?
So I love Baseball Reference, my favorite website, but the autoplay of all these videos just took me down. So I'm gonna have to reevaluate my baseball website choices.
The thing is, Baseball Reference is so good.
It's the best.
I feel like the videos, you just give into the videos because it's so good.
They want me to pay $9 a month to get ad-free. So it's like, come on. What do you want me to do here?
Don't do it. It's not worth it. Just let the videos roll. Well, hey, it's almost March. We got March coming up on Friday, March 1st Friday. It's kind of crazy when I think about it. Madness will ensue soon here. But before we get to March, Thursday tomorrow is Leap Day, February 29th. Doesn't come around too often. How are you celebrating this day?
Yeah, no real big celebrations for me. I think just the fact that it only comes around every 4 years, I just kind of laugh. That's kind of our made-up day to keep our calendar going. And there's a great chick flick called Leap Year. It takes place in the great country of Ireland. So if you're into the chick flick, go check it out. It's a good one.
So they're insinuating that Leap Year is an Irish holiday.
I think there's a little bit of a Irish theme to that. Yeah. There's a whole like romance thing going on,
Yeah, I'm not a big Leap Day guy. I don't know if that's a thing. But I do appreciate that people have, if you were born on Leap Day, you have a birthday every 4 years. You're a fourth of the age. It's like the opposite of dog years, which in some ways you got to appreciate that.
Chris, when you started, I thought you were going to say, I'm not really a big fan of rom-coms. And I was like, tell us more, Chris. I want to hear more.
Well, I like the rom-coms. Some of them hit well.
It's good to know.
Is I Love You Man a rom-com?
Oof. Pretty hot take, I think.
I have to see it again.
You can make that argument. I can make that argument.
You could.
Forgetting
I don't
Sarah
think it's
Marshall?
a traditional rom-com. I'll say that. I'm going to go out there.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've watched it, so I have no opinion. I just felt like I needed to throw it out there. Talking of March, we're about a month away from baseball starting. It's really exciting. And in fact, on the pod today, we're going to talk some fantasy baseball. Give you a little bit of a forecast. Any obscure rituals or traditions either the day of or the day before? And this is a Chris Smith special. So, you guys do anything before or on this day that's kind of obscure or different?
Yep. So I've Chris will describe his ritual in a minute here. I've did partake in his ritual at one point in time. So every year I do think of what Chris is doing for his ritual. So that's maybe part of my ritual. And then, get out the grill, put some brats on the old grill, whether it's, a good, crisp 32 degrees out or not, you get out there and, kind of make it feel like it's baseball season. And, yeah, nothing better than in Wisconsin, under 40 degrees, we're playing baseball. So it's good stuff.
I like that my ritual lives rent-free in your head.
It does.
That just,
it really does.
That's all I really needed tonight. Yeah, so every year, the day before opening day, the night before, I watch the movie Fever Pitch. Talk about rom-coms. I mean, here you go.
There you go.
But it's a great movie for just setting the stage for baseball season. The movie progresses through the entire season, but there's some specific scenes to spring training, getting season tickets in the mail, going to opening day. It's great. So that's what gets the juices flowing in my household.
I mean, Jimmy Fallon, Drew Barrymore. It's kind of a power rom-com couple there, you know?
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie.
You haven't? You gotta.
I mean, I know it's set in Boston, and Fenway's dope. I mean, if you haven't been to Fenway, you need to go there. Have you been to Fenway from, Doug?
I've not. I've had friends, and I have not. But I was going to say my quick hot take is I think Fever Pitch is a top 5 sports romantic comedy. So you need to watch it, Phil. It's really good.
How many sports romantic comedies are out there, though?
I know. I just started thinking that as I made that take. I was like, I need some data to back this up.
Firmly in the top 5.
Firmly.
Hey, if you're on Twitter or the X, thank you, Elon, and you know of any sports rom-coms that you want to put on the message board, it's not a message board. If you want to tweet at us, whatever, please do, because I only know of one, and that's currently Fever Pitch. Although I did watch is it Basketball Wives? There's some reality TV show. It's not really a rom-com. But anyway, well, cool. I think I wear my Carlos Marmol jersey on opening day or before opening day.
So at some point, I appreciate you saying that, because at some point we need to go in depth on the obscure jerseys that we have acquired in our time together.
I just realized none of us are wearing a jersey. Frem, you're usually wearing one.
Oh, no.
Decided to change it up.
8th grade baseball jersey. Dubuque, Iowa. We were the Padres. Oh, yeah.
I was wrong about that. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Dubuque, Iowa. Is that where you're from?
I am from many places, Phil, but I did live there for a good number of years in my youth. So it's a good time.
Right on the border there. Right on the river.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I know people are bored of us. Oh, I was going to ask you, does Heather watch Fever Pitch with you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Let's go, Heather Smith.
50-50.
Listen to the pod, Heather Smith, all the way through. Let's move on to Badger basketball. Not that we want to, because it's kind of depressing. Last night they lost to Indiana, at Indiana, on the road roughly. So, 74-70. Wisconsin finishes in February with a 2-6 record. What is your reaction to the loss? What's your analysis of it? What were you thinking as you were watching it?
Yeah, so I've heard some Badger fans already, call it a free fall. I think it is. I think it is a fair critique at this point, just given how our season has gone to this point and the expectations that were once had for this team. I disagree with the take. I think we're still playing very competitive basketball. We're in just about every game. We're always fighting. So I think, I don't necessarily like to call it a free fall, because I think we're still going to be in most games. Whether we can close or finish or win games is another story. 8 of 26 from three. So once again, not really shooting the three ball that well. I think this game was decent. All things considered. Only 11 points off the bench with Blackwell. I think I made this comment to you before we started here. We just don't seem to have any consistent star power, any studs that are really going to show up for us night in and night out. And I think at the end of the day, we have a lot of good players on a good talent. And on a given night, if we get 2 or 3 of them to all perform at a high level, I think we can win any game. But making that happen on a consistent basis, especially in March Madness when it's one and done and you need to win to stay in tournaments, I don't see that happening. late game here against Indiana, just really lacking confidence. Didn't see us, knowing really what to do late in the game and really being comfortable of even who should get the ball or who should shoot. So I think just expectation-wise, it's been really disappointing to see where this team is at right now, though.
Yeah, it's disappointing when you're consistently losing to bad teams. And unfortunately, February was a really rough month where we went. I mean, going on the road and winning is hard, right? And the Big Ten is traditionally a tough conference to win on the road. The problem is the Big Ten's just not that good this year. And we lost to Penn State, we lost to Indiana, we lost to Michigan, Iowa. I mean, Iowa's pretty good. But these are not tournament teams that we are losing to. And like Frem said, some of the things that really bother me with this team is that it just feel like these games feel like every game felt like last year, where they're coming down to the final possession. You don't know who's going to get the ball. I don't think sometimes they know who's getting the ball. And the shot clock gets down to 5, 4, 3. We still don't have anything going, and we chuck up a shot, which is disappointing because last night when we were driving the ball to the lane, we were having a lot of success. And we only had 2 turnovers. We took 22 more shots than them. And we still, at the end of the day, settled for threes in the closing moments. And I've said it, and I know we've reiterated on the podcast, but we're not a good three-point shooting team. We are at our best when we're driving to the lane, and we just go away from it in big moments. So that was disappointing. The bench, Blackwell was the only one who scored off the bench. In fact, the bench didn't really even play a lot of minutes. Gilmore came in for a few minutes. Ilver came in for a few minutes. Essegian didn't play much again. Like, I think Gard doesn't really have a guy that he can go to outside of Blackwell. And that's not going to cut it in March when you're going against teams that are consistently getting better throughout the year. If we can't go deeper than 6, it's definitely danger time. But overall, looking at the statistics, I feel like they played okay, but we can't stop anybody, and especially on the road. And it's a theme. It's not going away. If we can't, in big moments, make stops, this is just not the time of year to be playing like this and being in this situation, and it's definitely concerning.
Such a I think a month ago, 6 weeks ago, we thought, hey, we're 11 deep. We're even 12 deep. We could play these guys, and they're going to come in and do their part or do the things that they do well. And now to say we're 6 deep, I mean, that is such. It's so frustrating because you feel like, hey, these guys should be maybe not getting better, but hey, becoming more in the flow of the offense, becoming more in flow of the team, knowing your role, and kind of moving forward with that. And the fact that the only one we can count on is Blackwell at this point, or the only one that's, I think making the plays that he should, right? He's obviously a very good cutter, really good around the basket, hits the occasional three, plays pretty good defense. So the fact that that's really the only one we can trust, man, what a turnaround from even 6 weeks ago. And it is a very obscure game if you look at it. I mean, you said we had 22 more shots. We only shot 3 free throws. They shot 15. We had 12. We had 10 steals. They had 12 turnovers. We had 3, but they had 7 blocks. We had none. I mean, it's a very, very bizarre game if you actually look at the stats of it. And I think Frem's right. Like, we have a lot of good players, but the star power are people coming out every night. And the one right now, which is weird, I mean, the one that scored the most points is Chucky Hepburn. And 6 weeks ago, he was scoring 2 to 4 points a game because all these other guys were shooting well or making plays or playing within themselves. And all of a sudden, that's changed. So yeah, kind of a bizarre game. No energy at the beginning. I guess, it's a road loss in the Big Ten. It's going to happen. Like Frem said, maybe not a free fall, but definitely a disappointing February. I'm not a fire Gard guy. I know there's a lot of people out there that can be like that. I guess, where do you guys stand on Greg Gard being the coach of the Badgers?
Yeah, I'll kind of just use a play on words and plug a point from the game. I think we didn't bring up is there was a fire alarm in the game. With whatever 9 or 10 minutes ago, I think the game was tied. And it was a reset. I think Chris mentioned when we were offline of it just really Badgers lost all momentum from that point on and just couldn't come back out and play well after that. So that was bizarre. The whole stadium was evacuated. All the players came out and they had to come back out and warm up. So fire alarm. I think it's interesting. Before we even came on, I was kind of with you, Phil. How could we get rid of Gard? But the more we talk here and sit and just processing how Badger basketball has fallen apart this year, I'm ready to pull the fire alarm on it. I look at his win percentage over 600. They're 60% win percentage. But then you look at his runs. We've only ever made it to a Sweet 16 with Greg Gard. After all the success with Bo Ryan, national championship appearance with Bo Ryan, we've fallen off the map. I think Bo Ryan, handed Greg Gard the keys to the castle here on this one. We have some really good recruiting going. I think we bring in some really good players. I think we have talent, and I think that piece right now where we don't have star power, it's very clear. Like you're saying, Phil, it looked like we had stars earlier in the season. So what changed? And I think that goes back onto the head coach. I think looking at our AD here, Chris McIntosh, he's not playing around. I mean, if you look at the culture of Wisconsin sports, he's like, you're not doing it. See you later. We saw that with Luke Fickell coming in here. I think they got rid of their hockey coach as well, men's hockey coach. He's not afraid to pull the trigger. Pull the fire alarm on when a coach isn't performing. I think he's coming up on a decade here of being in the with Badger basketball, and we're not seeing results. And I think at this point, it's at what point do you keep pushing this along here? Keep dragging this along, maybe. I think watching how this season falls apart. I mean, we better beat Rutgers. I'll just say that. I think it's a guaranteed loss against Illinois, a guaranteed loss against Purdue. If we somehow lose to Rutgers, I don't know. Do we are we the last four in the tournament or something at this point? I don't want to catastrophize here, but it begs the question: how bad does this get here? I think we need 19 wins to at least be a 9 seed, maybe win a game in the Big Ten tournament. Maybe we're a 9 or 10 at this point. But this could get ugly. I just want to say that. So I predict Guards out at the end of the season because I don't think we're going past the first round, no matter where we get in the tournament.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth in my head, and I think anyone that knows me knows I'm a Greg Gard truther from the beginning. Never really wavered on that. And I think the biggest thing, Phil, you said it, I think on our first podcast, is it feels like every year we kind of go through this swoon, where we just go through this little losing streak. And at first when we lost a couple of games, I kind of thought that's where we were. We were just in that mid-season lull. But the problem is, and the biggest Greg Gard critiquers always point out that his inability to develop talent beyond maybe their first or second year. And I think in some ways we're starting to see that again. Where, and let me say, Chucky Hepburn, Phil, you said it, is playing so well right now. Probably the best he's ever played in his whole career. So I want to make that known. But in terms of guys like Klesmit, it's hard. He's just not playing well. Crowell hasn't developed beyond what he was maybe a year ago. And when we're talking about when you don't have a team that's that deep and you don't have star power, you need people that, in this system, you need people that can continue to develop. And we have a really nice recruiting class coming in next year. I don't think it's the talent. And I don't know. I can't point a finger on what I think it is. But for some reason, Greg Gard doesn't have this ability right now to get players to take that next step, and especially in season. And that's really what we want, right? We want the team to get better as the year goes on, so you're peaking at the right time. And now this is a couple straight years where we're doing the opposite. And that's where I get concerned long term. Now, do I think they should fire him? No. I don't think it's quite to that point yet, especially we have a top 10 point guard in the nation coming in next year. John Blackwell's a really nice piece. AJ Store's a nice piece. Chucky's coming back. We have really good talent, but I feel like next year is kind of the make or break it year. And until that point, I hope they can still turn it around this year, but I have concerns long term about where this team is going. But I'm not ready to pull the fire alarm yet. I don't think the season's quite over. We still have a couple games to turn it around before Big Ten tournament.
So, I'll let Phil go. I had a question for you both, but yeah, Phil, you go.
Hold on a second. I think you're right about Gard with developing talent. I mean, I think that's true. Our teams don't seem to get better throughout the year. If you think of like Tom Izzo, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. So it's easy to say, oh, you know, it's easy to look at Tom Izzo, but his teams just get better. Now, are they as good as the Badgers this year? I don't think so. Actually, I don't. But I think you see how he develops talent. And I think that's my biggest thing with Gard. And the thing is, we were playing really fast at the beginning of the year. So all of a sudden, you stop doing that. Why are you stopping doing that? Now, maybe you're starting to get into Big Ten play. Teams know you. They know how to scout you. They know your weaknesses better, strengths better. Maybe that's a reality that we're kind of overlooking. I mean, they lost by 4. And they lost on the road. Again, it's an Indiana team which we've usually beat on the road or at home. But it's not like I don't think the sky is falling here. And yet, is Greg Gard going to be able to get us to a Sweet 16 or Elite 8? I have real doubts. And I think that's the problem. I think for Wisconsin fans, we've tasted Final Fours. And so are we going to be able to get to a Final Four with this team? It doesn't feel like it. Now, if they play those first 10 games of the year, I think we all had thoughts maybe they could get to a Final Four, or maybe they have a chance to. It just doesn't feel like that now. Now, I'm with you. I don't think they fire him. If they lose the first game of the tournament, though, I think there's a chance. Now, I don't think that happens, because I think we usually come out on the first game. And I think I've even said, hey, I think Elite Eight's possible. But if they lose that first game, then I think it really changes. Friend, what were you going to ask us?
So kind of my point. I bet they'll beat the Rutgers, 500 team there. Guarantee, lose Purdue, Illinois. You end what? Does that make 19-13? How many tournament games do you need to win even here? And even maybe then an NCAA tournament to make sure he keeps his job. If they win nothing in the tournament, the Big Ten tournament, they're 19-14 then. Maybe they're a last 4 in 10 seed, maybe a 10 seed, maybe a 9 seed. But I'm just curious, like what does he have to do here to make sure he keeps his job right now? And I'm even thinking he probably needs to win one of those Purdue or Illinois games to maybe save his job at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you can't miss the tournament. That's number one. You miss the tournament, that's 2 years in a row. I mean, so this is where I struggle too. The comparisons with Bo Ryan, right? Like, a lot of these same questions that we ask about Gard, we were asking about Bo Ryan. Like, can he get to the second weekend? Can he get to the third weekend? And for a long time, they didn't. They were always competitive. They're always a top 4 team. The difference, though, is that Bo Ryan's teams never missed the tournament. They always finished top 4 in the Big Ten. Yeah, a lot of times they had early exits past game 1, but Gard hasn't proven that yet. And we're in year 8, like you said, Fram. Like, this is, we kind of know where we're at, like, as a program. And yeah, when you sniff 2 Final Fours and potentially a national championship, you can't settle then for just making the Sweet 16 or even hoping to get to the Sweet 16. So yeah, you got to make the tournament one. And I think, like Phil said, you definitely got to win a game in the tournament. And at that point, you're kind of playing with house money.
I don't think they're in danger of missing the tournament. The resume's too good. I actually think we have a chance of beating Illinois. We need a bounce back game. I mean, there's something about that when you get in front of the home crowd against a really good team. And yet, I mean, is there a chance we finish 0-3 the rest of the way? There is a chance, because Rutgers is playing well. and we're obviously not playing that well, or at least consistently. What do you think is the key for us rebounding against Illinois on Saturday? I mean, Friend, you said you don't think we win at all, but is there something that we can maybe hope for, or what's a change that needs to happen within the team?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you kind of saw it this last game. Illinois has some big dudes, to get to the rim and inside. I don't think our interior defense can hold up. I think Kral is, like the guy, but he's crumbling inside right now. Defensively, I think we need to attack, get to the hoop, and I think we need to shoot the ball. We need to make, somewhere north of where we were. I think north of 30%, closer to 40% on the 3-point line. We need to. I think we need to be aggressive offensively. Illinois is tough. Illinois has a lot of firepower, and so I'd like to think we could lock them down a bit, but I think unfortunately we're gonna have to score more. You just have to outscore them, which we're gonna have to get hot. I think that's the only answer I see of this Badger team. Just trying to find, I think at this point, lightning in a bottle, which is hard.
Yeah, I think we beat Illinois, actually. And like you said, Phil, like in times of adversity, like teams step up. And the one thing that I appreciate about this team is that they don't seem to lose their composure in their press conferences. They just keep talking about wanting to get better and play better. And like no one's throwing anyone under the bus. So that's where I feel okay that the season's not over. And I think Illinois is kind of the perfect team to go out and beat. Like you beat a top 10 team, like, okay, we can do this again. Then you get Rutgers at home, which should be an automatic win. You go to Purdue. I assume we lose to Purdue. But then at least you go into the Big Ten tournament with some momentum. And then at that point, I think they're okay. So this is the game. They lose to Illinois. I have a lot of concerns, but I think if they can beat them, this can turn quicker than I feel like we all think.
Well, and I just think the defense has to be there right away. You come out aggressively. You come out on, we see a lot of screen and roll against us, and we play a lot of really passive defense. I think if you play that aggressively where the center, the power forward comes out on the point guard or the shooting guard or whoever, I think that makes a difference. We were doing that in the first 10 games. I don't know why we're not doing it. In fact, they did it once in the first half against Indiana where Wall came out hot or aggressive against against the guard as he was taking the screen. And they didn't really do it much since. So I think the defense for sure needs to change. I'm glad at least we have one optimist. We have Friend the pessimist. We have Chris Smith 9 the optimist. And I'm also optimistic. I think if we lose to Illinois, I mean, they're a good team. I just think it's how we look. If we lose and we look good, I'll be okay. If we don't look like we came out well or came out on fire or it got to us, I'll feel a little more concerned, especially then playing Rutgers, which, I think like you said, Chris, should be an easy win. But they've been playing well, and they smoked us by so much on the road or when we were at Rutgers that it gives me pause. Any last thoughts on the Badgers?
Yeah, I think, final word is I'm pulling the fire alarm. This Illinois team scored 105 points against Minnesota recently. I would love to see us keep the game within 10. I mean, if we can just even play competitively, that's my belief is at least we can play competitively and stay in games and keep the fight. And to Chris's point, keep like the sense of like drive and determination that we're not giving up on ourselves. We're not giving up on the season. I'd at least like us to go into the Big Ten tournament, after hopefully beating Rutgers and win a game or two. I still have a very small amount of optimism, but it's shrinking right now. And I don't think there's going to be patience for Gard after we have a first round exit in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm not going to waver. I think my key is they got to hit the three. Against Illinois, they got to be able to score, and it's going to be tough to score inside. You got to be able to drive, dish, and hit the three, and if they do, they'll be just fine.
What's frustrating is if you hit a shot or two against Indiana in the final 3 minutes, you probably win the game, and maybe this is a different conversation. It's like that slim of margins here, and yet we've seen them lose every tough game on the road, 2 in OT, one getting killed at Rutgers, one against Michigan that, yeah, it's kind of similar to this game. I mean, it's one of these things where it's slim margins in sports. And it feels like with Gard, and we kind of talked about this, that, yeah, who's getting the ball? Who's taking the shot? Who wants the shot? And it just feels like now not a lot of confidence, a lot of thinking at the end of games versus just playing. So should be interesting when we talk about it next week. How the game goes will dictate our conversation, obviously, right? Because I think when we were going through this losing streak at the beginning, we were like, it's okay. And now it's like, well, what is this team? So will be interesting. We're going to pivot to fantasy baseball. We're a month away. Spring training is underway. Catchers and pitchers have reported. We're going to kind of go through, some studs, some duds, and some breakouts for every position. But first, we got to talk about Cody Bellinger because the Cubs signed him. 3 years, $80 million. Great contract for the Cubs. Chris, could you explain more of the contract details for the audience?
I mean, the biggest thing to know is that there's technically an opt-out after each year. So he signed a 3-year deal, but after each year, he can opt out. So it really depends on how he plays. If he plays really well, that's a realistic possibility. If he struggles, he's locked in for 3 years.
Okay. So with this new signing, new offseason grade for the Cubbies.
E. I give him a B now. I think I was at a C before, and now I'm more optimistic. And I do think there's one more signing coming. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Who do you think?
I think it's either going to be Jordan Montgomery or Matt Chapman.
Okay. That's a bold take.
Feeling good about it.
Fred?
Not the Cubby fans believe.
You're a Brewers fan? I don't even know if you care about this question, but what's your offseason grade?
I think I gave him a. I was more C plus B minus. I think I give him up to a B plus. I know I left Bellinger off my duds for outfielders. I didn't want to rain on your parade over here. But I mean, I think Cody adds something to the lineup. I'm no doubt, and I think the Cubs are a little bit better than what people expect. I like their bullpen a lot. I think they're starting pitching with Imanaga. I think they have some pieces. I definitely don't think they're going to roll over by any means. I think they have a good core to compete. So I think they're going to be in the wild card with the Brewers, fighting for a spot there. So I think they're going to have a pretty good season. Definitely north of 80 wins, probably, somewhere that 85, 87 win total.
I mean, Craig Counsell, I just trust. He's top 3 manager in the game. I thought that even was with the Brewers. I was very jealous that he was on the Brewers. And I like David Ross, but we just floundered at the end of the season. I do blame David Ross for that, actually. I do. We had some injuries. Bullpen was tired. Obviously, Frem, you're feeling the Brewers' optimism, which is good. I also give it a B+. I don't know if I want Chapman because I think he's 30. And if we sign him to a 5 or 6 year deal, it feels like that's what it's going to take. Maybe I'm wrong because I thought Bellinger would be similar.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to end up in a similar type contract where huge money, but with the opt-out clause, or just a 1-year deal and go back at it next year.
That'd be awesome. Gosh, I hate Scott Boras.
Yeah.
He's the one that causes all this. All right, let's get to studs, duds, and breakouts at each position. But before we do that, I just want to say that I think in this podcast, I think Frem is the breakout. You can kind of see it, has energy, not taking the nap. And then it just comes down to who's the stud and the dud of me and Chris. And I look highly on Chris, and I think he's the stud, and therefore I'm the dud. But maybe I'm the milk dud?
Ooh.
I just had some of those last night. It was really good. You guys don't need to comment on that. That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to go position by position, catcher, first base, etc. And Chris kind of created this for us where we're going to talk about a stud in the position, a dud and a breakout. And that's kind of gonna, I don't have all the studs or all the duds or all the breakouts. We kind of mix and match. So we're going to start with catchers. And let's start with the stud. This is presented to you by Brian Fremming. Who is your stud for fantasy baseball year 2024?
Yeah, if you play fantasy baseball, you know that the catcher position, you could argue, is kind of a little bit like the kicking position in fantasy football. So if you don't play fantasy baseball, just kind of take that for what it is. Not a lot of good catchers out there. So I'm just going to take the best one of them all. This is, a guy in the top 50, Adley Rutschman, just, only 26 years old. Could, still, even perform better than he did last year. I think the ceiling is pretty high for this guy. So definitely just, everything kind of coming to fruition for him. He had 20 bombs, 80 RBIs last year, hitting 277 here. I think the guy is probably one of the few catchers that you could really say will be standing out for you, or somebody you want to go get in a draft if you're playing fantasy baseball. A lot of catchers you can punt on to late rounds. You can kind of just pick somebody in the top 10, top 15, and you can kind of interchange them. I think Adley's the one guy who has some real talent there, ratios, really going to make your team better. I think you get some DH time as well this year. But Adley Rutschman definitely, I think, like the one catcher for sure you want to go get if you're going to take that strategy. I think many will just kind of punt on the position, but Adley's the one that I could say is definitely worth drafting at a you think of like first 3 rounds for sure.
I love the Orioles, man. They're gonna be so fun to watch. Chris, you have the dud for the catchers. Who's that for you?
I have the dud. I'm going with a guy that I love, which hurts my heart so much, but it's JT Realmuto. He's going as the second catcher off the board. But if you look at his stats over the last couple of years, you can start to see some points of decline. And I'm someone that I want to be out a year early than a year late. And it just feels like he's trending that direction. Last year he hit 252. I think he still hit 20 home runs and had 13 stolen bases. But his OBP was lower. I don't have a lot of confidence that he's going to continue to steal 10 plus bases a year, which that's what gives him a lot of his value. There's a good team. He's in a good lineup. I do think he'll play maybe potentially a few less games than he is now. Maybe he'll DH or play first base or something, but I just don't think he's the player he was. And given where he's being drafted, like Brian said, I'd rather just wait and take a chance on someone else.
Yeah, he's getting older, man. I like him too, but he's just older. I picked an obscure breakout here. I thought about Cal Raleigh from Seattle because I think he'll actually add more average. I don't think he'll just be home run, strikeout, or bust, or walk, I guess. I mean, that's the 3 outcome, whatever. I picked Gabriel Moreno, which, he's ADP 11th out of catchers. Some sites he's worth 7th or 8th. He's younger. He's 24, 25. He's not going to get you a lot of power. But if you look at especially last year, this is his first full year of starting. He actually started on Toronto in his career, got traded to the D-backs. In the second half, he hit 5 home runs in 149 at-bats, or 131. It's not a lot, but he actually was way better in the second half in his stats than the first half. He is the guy there. He's going to be catching probably 120, 130 games. He's cheaper, right? ADP 7 to 11, somewhere in there. And he's 25 or 24. So you get the sense like, maybe he could grow. Maybe he could get better. He only had 6 stolen bases. Maybe that increases. As Prem said, catcher is kind of this volatile position. Do you just punt on it? Do you get rid of it? Or not, fully get rid of it, but do you kind of just, in your draft, wait? I think Moreno's one of those guys. You could wait a while, and then you feel, okay, at least I'm going to get average. He's going to hit 300, or at least near there. His OBP is going to be around 260 or 360. If I'm drafting a catcher in the 13th or 14th round, or maybe even a little bit sooner, maybe 10th, 11th, man, I feel pretty good, even knowing, hey, there's maybe some upside there. People might disagree with that. I could have gone the easy route and picked Cal Raleigh, but I'm going to go Gabriel Moreno just because of some of those, I think, promising numbers, especially toward the second half. Let's move to first base. Unless, Chris, did you have a thought on my breakout? You are the
No,
stud of us
I
three.
like Gabby Marino, and he's a good wait and see player. He'll hit for a nice average, and that team's good, so he'll be just fine.
Chris, the stud of our group. Okay, let's move to first base. Chris, we'll start with you with the stud. Who's your stud at the not the hot corner? What's the other corner called?
First base.
We got to work on that name. Okay,
I don't know if
first
it has a
base.
name.
Who's your stud?
Yeah, my stud will be no surprise is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is his fifth. No, this is his 6th year in the league. He's just about to turn 25 years old. I hate to do this because I don't like to, but he's in really good shape right now. Looks good. But I do think he's going to win an MVP, and I think this could be the year he does it. He hits the ball harder than almost anyone I've ever seen play the game of baseball. His plate discipline is really strong. He's in a good lineup in a division that's not as strong as it's been in the past. I'll just say it. He's going to win the MVP in the AL, and he's going first base 5 ADP off the board. I would have no issue taking him higher than that and letting him be the anchor of your lineup. I'm going to say 40 home runs, 110 RBIs, and he hits 300.
No surprises. Good song by Radiohead. When you said that, that's what pinged for me. Hopefully it's not a surprise. Hopefully he wins MVP. I have the dud for this section. And I picked somebody I respect, somebody I really like, somebody I've trusted in fantasy in my lifetime here. But my dud is Paul Goldschmidt. He's around ADP 7. It's just due to age. He's 36. He's going to be 37 in September. Last year was a down year in his kind of career. And down, I mean, it's pretty relative for him. I mean, he still was strong where he had 11 stolen bases. He had 25 home runs, 80 RBIs. But I just think that over time, these players just lose it. Age takes its toll. He still may play 150 games, 140 games. He still may get you similar stats to that. But I wouldn't buy early. I wouldn't buy even where he's at. Only if it's a bargain do you take him, in my head. And again, a lot of respect. He's won MVPs. I just think Father Time takes its toll. So that's my dud, because I think already from last year you could see where he's starting to fall off a little bit. So, friend, you are the last of us. The breakout for first baseman this year.
Yeah, I think I get the kind of the fun one here of the three. Phil, this is I think your guy from fantasy baseball last year. CES Christian, can I say it right? Encarnacion Strand.
Encarnacion.
Encarnacion. Is it Strand? I should have
Straight up
Strand. Yep.
Strand.
Brand. There we go. So CES, it's a mouthful. But he's a guy who definitely could be a stud right now. In only 61 games, 241 plate appearances, 13 home runs, 37 RBIs, 270 average. This guy just needs to get to the plate. I think that's the big thing here. They just need to free up playing time. Joey Votto is gone. But I think they still have other guys they brought in now. They're competing for playing time here. He could be a DH only maybe and play a little first base, but this guy just needs plate appearances. He has legit power, raw power. He's making contact. He has the average. Not striking out too much. So this dude just needs to get to the plate. And he's going to be a star in years to come.
All right, well, let's move to second base. I start with the stud here, and this guy's multi-positional. I think he could be second base. He could be shortstop. He could also be outfield. But my stud in terms of second base is Mookie Betts, otherwise known as the Mookie Monster. He's average draft position 1 for second baseman. And I don't know if there's a lot to be said. Anybody that follows baseball at all knows who Mookie Betts is. Knows that he's on the best lineup in the league with the Dodgers, especially now with Ohtani joining them. And while he's had sometimes slower first halves in years past, or I think at least the last 2 years, he's always come on strong. And last year, especially in the second half, feels like he just finally found his footing in LA and was an MVP candidate, and obviously showed that he's one of the best players in baseball, top 5 in all of the sport. Pretty easy to pick. And second baseman's kind of a weird, I think one of the harder positions to draft this year. And yeah, if you have a chance at Mookie Betts, please take him. Fremming, we'll move to the dud. Who's your dud this year for second baseman?
I just can't pronounce anyone I picked. I think that's the hardest thing here.
That just shows you're white and from Wisconsin. It's not your fault. Yeah,
I know.
That's all of us.
Kim. So Ha-Seong Kim. Yeah. So this guy is being drafted in the top 100 here. Being drafted too high. What it looks like, yeah, Chris told ADP 8 here. I think you could definitely find guys later on in the draft that might perform better. He had 47 stolen base attempts last year. That was a huge increase. I think he over doubled his stolen base attempt total last year. And he's only in the 79th percent sprint speed, which is like in the bottom 30 for people attempting this many stolen bases. So stolen bases might not come to fruition this year. And if he's not stealing bases, he's not producing enough at the plate to really draft him that high. I think the Padres also aren't going to be nearly as competitive. They've lost a lot of big players this year. So I do not expect them to be as competitive. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe Kim's going to be stealing more bases that way. But I really question just offensive production in general for him with that offense. And then, stolen base total was a big piece for him. So I think definitely he's being drafted too high right now.
And Chris, you get the breakout.
Let's go. I'm going with second base, number 17 off the board, Edouard Julien from the Twins, also known as Julian Goulian. But he got his first kind of cup of coffee in the bigs last year, had somewhere around over 300 plate appearances. But if you look at his track record in the minors, he's roughly a 280, 290 hitter with potentially 15 to 20 home runs and potentially double-digit stolen bases. He's going to hit in the top half of that order. And if you follow the Twins, you know that they're going to be a pretty good team in a really bad division. I think he could potentially produce top 10 second base value this year. And Phil, like you were talking about with Moreno, like you don't have to take him till probably like around 14 or 15, which is beautiful. And to get a guy with a lot of upside, I think he's a slam dunk. If you want to wait on second base, take a look at Julian Goulian.
And his on base percentage is like 380 to 400. I mean, it's just
he's such a patient hitter. Yeah,
he's awesome. Let's move to third base. Friend, you have the stud. Who's the stud on a third base this year?
This is a guy I used to own in fantasy baseball, and I always thought he had great power, but never thought he could all put it together. Chris rattles off these numbers for Vladdy, and Austin Riley is really coming into his own here, and might contend with being one of the best players in all of baseball right now. Guy's only 26 years old for the Atlanta Braves, 37 home runs, 97 RBIs last year with a 281 average. This average is really, I think, amazing with all that power right now. He does strike out a little bit too much right now still, but if he can decrease his strikeout total just a little bit, this guy is right up there with, I think, any of the elite players in the game right now. And being only 26, you got to wonder where this guy could go. So the Braves have really special talent in Austin Riley right now. And I think I had him 2 or 3 years ago, and I was like, this guy can hit the ball, but Never saw his average there. Always saw him striking out too much, but he's put things together now. Average up. And he's a force to be reckoned with.
Chris, you have the dud. We've heard his name before. Who's the dud for third baseman?
Yeah, so my dud was Ha-Sung Kim, who's multi-position eligible, but for the same reason Frem said, like the stolen base, I don't think it's sustainable, and that's really what's driving up his value. If I have to pick another one, and honestly, looking at the top 10 third baseman, I don't see a lot of duds in that list. I'm just going to throw that out there. But right outside the top 10, guy named Jake Berger plays for the Marlins. If you've ever actually watched him play, he's kind of an all or nothing player, low OBP, low average, just relying on home runs. I don't see it in that park, and I don't think that plate discipline meshes well in the NL East. So if you're looking for a late third baseman, I'm not taking Jake Berger.
And I have the breakout. I picked for breakout Royce Lewis, otherwise known as Rolls Royce. And he's ADP 6, so you might think, it's still kind of the upper echelon of third baseman. But I think with him, he's just been so injury prone throughout his career in the Twins. He's like Byron Buxton 2.0. And I just think this weird thing of being injury prone, I don't, sometimes it's true. I think sometimes we kind of like put that on a player too early. And I'm thinking with Rolls Royce, I think we are. He had an amazing second half last year. He's a former number 1 overall pick. He's on a very good team, like Chris just said, with the Twins. I think he stays healthy, 130, 140 games this year, and is totally worth an ADP 6, if not a little bit higher. I think he breaks out in a real way, maybe as an all-star, that kind of talent there. So that's who I predict this year for breakout third baseman. Let's move to shortstop. Let's get to the studs. Chris, start us with the stud here.
Yeah, I feel like I cheated here because I didn't want to pick any of the top because they're so good. So I went with CJ Abrams, which is kind of like a breakout / stud. If you looked at his second half last year, he truly did break out. He's a guy that can do it all. He can hit for power. He can steal bases. I think he will continue to increase his batting average as his plate discipline's gotten better. If you don't know the name CJ Abrams, he came from San Diego in the Juan Soto trade, was a big piece of that. I actually think Washington, in a future podcast, I'll probably say I think they could be a breakout team, and I think he's going to be near the top of that lineup making stuff happen.
Cool, yeah, he's a fun player, especially all the stolen bases. I have the dud, and this got some pushback in the pod, kind of pre conversation. Totally fine. My dud this year, I think, is Matt McClain. Now, good player, former first round pick, on this kind of young stud Reds team. It's a really exciting team to watch. He did drop off in the second half. Started really hot. I think Chris owned him. He traded him. He regretted it. But then he actually had, it wasn't a bad second half, but it wasn't as good. I think he hit around 260, 250. He's 24, 25 years old. I could definitely be wrong about this one. This is a little bit of a hot take. But I feel like, especially seeing a second half downturn, again, it's a rookie. Maybe you think, hey, they're young. They're not used to a full season. But I'm just going to go on a limb and say I think this year is where he drops off a little bit and maybe just hits around 260. Right? I think he ended 290 last year. Decent amount of home runs, I think 11. I bet he stays around 260, 265, and maybe hits 15 home runs, which isn't horrible. It's not a bad stat line, right? 15 to 20 home runs. It's not a bad stat line, but it's definitely not maybe where he's being drafted. And again, all this young talent, people are drawn to the young talent, especially somebody like Chris, and they want that guy, right? And I think somebody will reach for him. That's just my opinion on it. Frem, you got the breakout. What's the breakout for?
I'll just say, Chris traded me McClain, so
I worked out in the end.
Yeah, it did work out in the end, but I think he's made a little better than what you're saying, but I respect the take. So this is, I think, kind of like in line with where Chris is coming from. Gunnar Henderson, right? So he's a rookie of the year. Definitely kind of cheating the concept, maybe of breaking out, but I'm saying breakout because the take here is I think he can even do better. So you got to look at the first 2 months of last year. This guy was terrible. He had, I think, with a batting average of 170 mid-May. With a 643 OPS. Like, this guy was awful for the first 2 months of last year. And then in June, this guy just goes on a tear. 270 average here. Over 22, 23 home runs. So this guy really turned it on in June. And the piece here is, hey, if this guy can play a full season consistently, the way he did from June on, this guy, you're talking maybe the best shortstop in baseball right now, which I think is, pretty amazing for the Oriole organization. I know I already had Adley in here. So I expect the Orioles to be a really good team. Got to be the favorite in the AL East over there. And, Gunnar Henderson, I think he's going to be an elite shortstop after next year.
Cool, let's move to outfield. I had the studs, and I picked the two obvious because I just couldn't not talk about them. And that's Ronald Acuna and Julio Rodriguez. If you get a chance to draft one of these guys, these are top 5 players in the game. Acuna won the MVP last year. Julio Rodriguez, I think, is 23, 22. I mean, he is a beast. So I think of these two players, right? They're kind of the next generation of the superstars of baseball, where they are 5-tool players, really good in the outfield, hit for power, average, stolen bases, you name it, they have it. They're going ADP number 1, ADP number 2. They're exciting players, ones that I just felt like I needed to talk about because of how they're kind of transforming the game. Frem, you have the dud. Who do you see as a dud this year?
Yeah, not a guy that I really dislike necessarily, but I think a guy that's being drafted too high. Josh Lowe for the Rays here. Being drafted, I think it's around 18, 19 there, ADP. And being drafted ahead of guys like Kyle Schwarber, Christian Yelich, Brian Reynolds, all guys who I think are going to outperform him. Guy has a 25% strikeout rate here. Probably going to see a lot of negative regression for this guy. A lot of lucky balls with balls in play, and just not a guy who's probably going to outperform the people that are being drafted behind him. And so being drafted in the top 20 there for outfielders. Not a big fan of Josh Lowe. Not to say he's not going to have a decent season, but I think it's all about value.
Chris, you got the breakout.
It's hard to follow the low expectations Frem set for Josh. But I am going breakout, and it is an obvious pick for me. Outfielder 24, Jordan Walker of the Cardinals, former top 5 prospect in baseball, and fun little nugget 2 years ago when I was at the Arizona Fall League. Got to see him play, and it's the loudest I've ever heard a ball sound off of a baseball bat. So that reams in my head when I think about this. But Jordan Walker, I feel like people think he had a down first year in the big leagues. And I'll just rattle this off. 16 home runs, 51 RBIs, 276 average with a 342 on base percentage. And that was hitting 7th in the lineup. He's going to move up to the top 3 or 4. He's going to be he's going to have some good protection there. I have no doubts he's going to hit 30 home runs and potentially hit 90 RBIs and hit around 280. I think he'll finish as a top 15 outfielder, and I'm taking him in every league I possibly can. Unfortunately, you two are in a league I'm in, so don't know if that's going to happen there.
Maybe I want to keep him now. He's on my roster right now.
I mean, if he was on my team, I'd probably keep him. That's how dire it is. Let's get to starting pitchers. From you have the stud. Who's the stud of the starters?
So I know you talked about father time. We're all fathers here, Phil. And I think, sometimes you can't dog the guys who get a little older, right? Consistency, predictability. We want these guys, right? Plug them in. We know what they're going to do, right? So I'm taking maybe one of the most consistent guys, Garrett Cole here. He had, I think over 200 innings here last year, over 200 strikeouts. This guy is just, he's got the mold. He's got a great arsenal. You know what to expect from him. Obviously injuries, would take down anyone here, but Garrett Cole healthy. This guy, is one of the best and elite. And I would argue that people are going to take, the Spencer Striders or some of these other up and coming pitchers, Corbin Burns, etc. But Cole is that predictability. I think that's what you look for. For your ace, you're building a rotation. You want to have some predictability. And so Cole, I think, is the guy you got to have in your roster.
Consistency, which is what we want in fantasy. Chris, the dud.
The dud was easy for me. Starting pitcher 6 off the board. And yes, we are getting older, and these people are younger than us. Let's just put that in perspective. But for me, it's Kevin Gausman of the Blue Jays. I've always liked him and knew someday he would break out, and he finally did. Here's the problem. He's going starting pitcher 6 off the board. He's never thrown 200 innings in his career. His ERA is solid. It's been below 3 the last couple of years, but his whip's sitting around 1.2. And if he's not throwing the innings, I could see some potential regression in his ERA. He's just one at starting pitcher 6 I'm never touching. He's not the consistency of a Garrett Cole, who's a little older. He, again, a year early. I don't think at this time next year Kevin Gausman will even be a top 25 starting pitcher coming off the board.
Dang, that's cool. That's crazy. That's a crazy take. My breakout, Grayson Rodriguez of, again, said Orioles. ADP 19. This is a Britton Castaigne special. I know he owned him all year. He might have dropped him for a small period and then picked him back up. If you look at his splits, it's pretty nuts. The first half, I think his ERA was 7.95. And I think at one point he may have even gone back to the minors. I could be wrong about that, but he may have gone back to the minors.
He did.
Yeah. Comes back second half. I think he pitches a 2.68, or it's sub 3. And sub 3 started pitcher in the MLB. That's an ace. That's a number 2. He was very highly touted. He's always pitched well in the minors. I think he's the one this year that you go early. Because he's the guy that you could have a keeper in your league, especially a league like ours. So I'm hoping to get them. I'm hoping to get them, Britton. I'm coming for him. Let's move to our final position. Relief pitchers. Chris, stud.
My stud, relief pitcher 5 off the board. I would take him as relief pitcher 1. Johan Duran of the Twins. If you've never seen him pitch, he throws over 100 miles an hour. He throws a nasty cutter. Like, go watch a video of the movement on his pitch. I don't know how he's hittable, and I think he's going to continue to get better. He could potentially... Well, I do think he'll lead the league in reliever ERA, potentially saves, even though that's random. But strikeouts wise, he's going to be competing with some starting pitchers. Like, he's that good. So Johan Duran of the Twins, lock him up, relief pitcher 1.
A lot of Twins, a lot of Orioles. My dud is Jordan Romano of the Blue Jays. He's ADP 8. He's going to be 31 in a couple months. He has been a pretty solid relief pitcher, saves in particular. His walk rate increased last year. And he's getting older. Once again, father time. We're all fathers, but father time is taking its toll on Jordan Romano. Again, it's all about when you get him, right? It feels like with closers in particular in a lot of leagues, you're kind of reaching because you feel like, oh, I need a closer. I need to get saves. I feel like people are going to do that with Jordan Romano because he's on a decent team. He has some of the pedigree, but I think some of the peripherals are showing that, hey, I think he's going to be outside of the top 10 this year, maybe even outside of the top 15, just because, well, one, the volatility of relievers, but also if we see the walk rate go up, I don't think that usually gets better, especially for a pitcher of his experience, how many innings he's pitched, etc. So he's my dud this year. From the breakout.
So Phil, just a little side note, are you worried about getting old? You keep bringing up father time. You mentioned your identity, Phil. I'm just a little concerned about you. You're calling yourself the dud. So
there's a lot of existential angst going on. Okay, friend?
Yeah.
Breakout.
Okay to get older. Andres Munoz, this guy, if you followed him, had Tommy John, came in a kind of a sneaky trade from the Padres to the Mariners. This guy was throwing gas before Tommy John came back, is still throwing gas. Every time I go into fantasy drafts, Chris is always ahead of me on this guy, and it really drives me nuts. I really want him to be part of my relief pitching. This guy just needs people to get out of his way. He's, with the Seattle Mariners, he gets stuck in a committee. He got injured last year, so the issue is, last year I think he was only in 52 game appearances only. But this guy has a 39% whiff rate. Go watch him pitch, like Chris was saying, for Duran, but go watch Munoz pitch. Just nasty stuff. Fastball over 100 miles an hour. And he is a guy who just needs the opportunity to close every game. And I think if he does, this is, definitely a top 5 closer without a doubt. You can draft him right now. I mean, unless you have Chris or I in your draft, you could probably wait on him. He's right now ranked outside the top 10. Which I think is pretty crazy because this guy has all the intangibles, to be an elite closer in the game.
Well, hopefully we scratched your itch. If you're a baseball fan, fantasy baseball guy, any last thoughts on fantasy baseball before we close here?
I will say, I know we're getting there in fantasy baseball times with the evolvement of the game, but if you're not using holds along with saves in your fantasy league, I think you're doing it all wrong, because the best relievers are often not the closers, and I want people to know that, and I don't know if that's catching on yet.
Good take.
I'm just thankful I know Chris. He's moved me along in my fantasy world. Always innovating, always thinking outside the box.
Take that out of context. Fantasy world. Love that quote.
We did live together, so
it's true. If you have a stagnant commissioner, oust him. Tradition, get rid of it. All right, we've gone over an hour, so I think I'm going to hold on our UW Whitewater food consumption until next week. Well, it's a little bit of a tease for next week. You're thinking through all the UW Whitewater options of food, and you're thinking, "Oh man, I want that. I want the taste of that." Thank you so much for listening. It's been fun. I like these guys. I hope you like these guys as well. I am your host, Phil Schultz. We'll see you next week. Man Sports Fan Podcast signing out.